All right, in this next video, I want to talk about finding your why. Why are you here? Why are you even thinking about stopping drinking alcohol? And what is it that's going to keep you motivated into the long term? So why are you here? You know, some people have seen some of my videos around. Maybe they've seen an ad, or maybe you've seen a post somewhere. Maybe you've seen something on social media. Perhaps you've seen a personal recommendation. Somebody said to you, you know, try out this guy, but whatever. The bottom line is that you're here because you want to make a change, and maybe you think that I've got some of the answers, right? So, you know, I have a couple of answers hopefully for you. Like me, before I stopped, I would imagine that you're experiencing some of the consequences now of putting this poison into your body. And I'm also sure that, you know, riding along with that is the need to change, and you're a bit ambivalent about it, but don't worry about it. It's a natural consequence. Everybody experiences some form of doubt, some form of hesitancy about any major change. You know, there's going to be a conflict in most people at this early stage because we've been brought up to believe that alcohol drinking is normal. We've been brought up to believe with a sort of a propaganda. We've been conditioned into this idea that that it's okay to drink for socialization, for reducing anxiety, for all those other things that we use alcohol for, that it's okay to do it from that perspective. But we've also got the conflict in the sense that your body only sees this physically as a toxin, and you are now coming across some of the downsides, some of the consequences of that drinking. You know. Let's go into one of my favorite tools, or one of my favorite mindsets. It's called the 4 Ps, and this is something that we tend to teach all the time, especially when people get into the second phase of transition, right, which is probably around a couple of months into the journey. The 4 Ps are perseverance, perspective, patience, and positivity. And these are life skills. They're life skills that I'm working on all the time for myself personally. They're life skills that I'm always trying to find different ways of expressing and different ways of building these as, I mean, I think they're just essential building blocks for getting to that best possible version of yourself. Perseverance is the drive that is going to push you. My dad used to call it true grit after this movie years ago with John Wayne in it. He had this tape, videotape. He used to play this thing. You know, I suppose I must have watched the movie about at least 10 times when I was a kid. It's the determination to overcome any hurdle, to smash your way through any obstacle, right? To find a way in order to move forwards. Perspective is what maintains your focus on what's important. It keeps you on that right track. Perspective is what we're talking about when we're talking about laddering up. And laddering up is when you're starting at the bottom of any experience, you're starting at a base level. And the more experience you get, the more experience you gain in any part of the journey, you start stepping up a ladder. And the further up this ladder you go, the broader your perspective becomes, the more you can see, the more you can bring in things like your life experience can be brought into it. It's just your perspective becomes a lot wider, so it gives you a different viewpoint on life, and you can make deeper plans. Your expectations about yourself become a lot more ingrained, a lot more informed, and they grow. I mean, it's one of the biggest it's the biggest signs of growth is when your expectations start to expand. Patience is the ability to be able to keep yourself in the game for the long term, to be able to keep an eye on the distant goal that you're aiming towards. It's understanding that this journey is going to deliver ups as well as downs, and being okay with that, you know, being okay with the failures that this is going to deliver. I mean, we've talked about this before in terms of alcohol is a simple thing to give up. It's only a yes or no. You either stop drinking alcohol or you don't, right? You either put the alcohol into your mouth or you don't. And it's as simple as that. Anything outside of that is complicating the matter, right? So what we're hoping is that you never fail in that. You can make plenty of other failures in the things that you're trying to do to replace those benefits that we think we're getting from alcohol. But We never want to fail in that one thing. That's the, as I say, the simplest part, and it's the easy part when you look at it from that perspective. Once you turn around, you start looking forwards. Patience is the thing that's going to keep that that momentum going. Now, positivity for me is the fuel that maintains this journey into the long term, right? It maintains your strength, it builds your strength, it gives you a lot more energy, it energizes your drive, it energizes that whole process of you having that true grit mentality. And it, as I said before, it keeps that momentum going. And we're looking at positivity from the perspective of not you're going around with a stupid grin on your face all day long. It's that you're approaching things, you're approaching failures, you're approaching life, you're approaching anything that might go wrong or anything that goes right with a very positive attitude. And the more positivity that you can bring to this, the better it is. Now, before you get to that 4 Ps, before we can teach the 4 Ps and before we can build those, you need to have a spark. You need to have that something that's going to get you off the ground and get you moving. This is what we're talking about with the why. It's an impetus. It's a reason for doing what you're doing. It's a reason for putting yourself through the discomfort that you're going to go through with any form of change. You can have perseverance, perspective, patience, positivity in bucket loads, but they're not going to do you any good, right? If you don't have that motivation to start, if you don't understand why you're doing it, if you haven't got that reason, that big reason that's pulling you forwards, what do you do? How do you keep going? All of these other things don't make any difference then. So your why is crucial. Now, one of the most basic of motivations, the simplest, I think, and possibly the most compelling motivation. The double edge to this, one is pain and the other is pleasure. So we're always moving away from pain and we're always trying to move towards pleasure in life. Now, pain motivation at the beginning of this journey when you're trying to stop drinking alcohol, it's there in almost everyone, right? That pain to start, that pain to change, that pain to get that momentum going. And the problem with this type of pain is that it doesn't last. It's very short term at best, especially psychological pain. Now, some of the physical pain, I certainly hope that you don't get this, right? But you know, a lot of people who have cirrhosis of the liver, for instance, they're going to have a continuous bout or continuous waves of pain for the rest of their lives because you cannot fix this, I'm not saying that necessarily they're going to have this, but there's a possibility. There's a possibility that the damage is caused and you're going to have to suffer the physical consequences of that. But for most people, it's going to be a psychological pain. It's a psychological discomfort. As we said earlier on in the last video, depending on how you look at this, if you view yourself as being an alcoholic, you're causing yourself a lot more psychological pain. You're causing psychological damage by using that label for yourself. And the more you use that and the more you use other labels that are similar to that, the negative labels, the more psychological pain that psychological pain is going to last, right? Now, most of the people that fail in this new journey do so because they're not looking beyond that pain motivation. They understand that the motivation is there to stop. They go through the motivation, but once the pain is gone, then the motivation is gone as well. I remember going to a dentist years ago and he said to me, I was there twice, I think, both times because I needed something done and I had pain. And he said to me, don't worry about it. Most people do this. We have no problem getting people in for appointments when they need to get the pain sorted out. But when we need to get cleaning done or general maintenance work, it's very difficult for people to keep their appointments, a lot of people. So some pain lasts, right? As an example of this, I want to talk about food and food memories. And, we'll get into a little bit of the detail here and it'll make sense as we're going into it. There are such things as good food memories. Think about when you were a kid and you were thinking about, everyone has a favorite candy that they used to eat that they can't get now. Maybe it was something as well from your mother or your grandmother that they used to cook that has just got this nostalgia attached to it. For me, it was apple pie. That was one of the things. And I just found it nourishing in a very physical way, you know, not as in it's nourishing me with nutrition, but nourishing me in a very, like, I'm getting a hug of this apple pie. I like it warm. It's a comfort food for me. And there's just a nostalgia attached to this. Now, this type of food is always contextual. There's almost always a person involved. There's a place involved. There's all these smells, etc. Now, food is very powerful because it involves all of the senses. You've got the sense of taste and smell, obviously, right? You've got the sense that you're seeing food, the sense of touch, you know, you're touching it with your fingers, or, you know, you've got the touch sensors inside of your mouth, but there's also an audible sense as well that you get from it. Think about when you're at home and you're waiting for your mum to cook dinner, and there's all the sounds of cooking, there's the smells of cooking. And this is something that really helps your digestive. It primes your digestive system. And it's one of the big reasons why eating at home with the family, this all helps out. So there's also pain memories attached to food. I'm getting to the point now. Food can cause poisoning, and then what happens is you get this conditioned food aversion. So this can happen with a dish, it can happen with a specific ingredient, it can happen with a place like an entire restaurant. You eat somewhere and you just won't go back to that restaurant again because it makes you feel bad. One of the things in childhood for me was milk of magnesia. So that's magnesium hydroxide. And it was always given to me when I was feeling ill and stomach ache or, you know, bowel problems or whatever. And I just hated that chalky taste. I associated it with illness. Same thing with fizzy orange, or fizzy orange that's lost the fizz. I had this in the car when I was a kid. I got car sick and I was drinking this, and I just associated with that. So I can't drink fizzy orange to this day. It doesn't make me feel good. I've had it with alcoholic drinks. Everyone knows this. There's a certain drink that you just cannot drink anymore. For me, it was Pernod. This is an aniseed drink that I think comes from France. Friend of mine, and we borrowed a caravan from his parents. We went down to this caravan for the weekend, brought some booze with us. One of the bottles of booze was this 40% Pernod. We drank this, got very ill after it, and I haven't been able to drink it since. So there's this aversion that I've got because of this. Now, it's a pity this doesn't happen to everything that's bad for us. It will be a lot easier in life, but a lot of these things are disguised, you know, the taste is disguised, especially when it comes to alcohol. But the point is that pain like this can last a lifetime, given the right context. I mean, a lot of this stuff, that orange juice, I drank when I was 6 or 7 years of age, and I can remember where I was. I can remember in the car exactly where I was when I was feeling sick. So, you know, it's given the right context, it can stay with you, but mostly pain is going to only last in the short term. Now, we can manufacture long-term pain for alcohol, but it is a double-edged sword, right? We can think about alcohol in a certain specific way. We can drive ourselves psychologically away from alcohol. We can move ourselves away from the habit of alcohol, but it takes time. It takes, you're picking it apart bit by bit. The less you drink, the more you think about alcohol in a negative way, then the easier it's going to be for that. But we also need something much more enduring, right? We need this, what I said to you earlier on about you need not only the pain, but you need to think about what's going to happen after the pain is over. Once the pain is stopped, what motivation are you going to have then? That's where pleasure comes in. Now, you need something which is going to make you feel excited about life, makes you feel excited to get up in the morning and to start moving forwards. It keeps you awake at night in a good way because you can't wait to get up in the morning, you know, and you're thinking about things, that kind of thing. It's inspirational. It provokes long-term thinking. It provokes consistent action. It galvanizes your efforts, and it makes you want to build this perseverance. That's why I'm saying we don't teach this stuff until we get into the second month at least, because we need to get past that pain threshold and go into the pleasure threshold in order for you to start building the perseverance, to widen your perspective out a little bit more, to reinforce your patience, and to start raising your general levels of positivity. So let me just start talking a little bit about why I stopped and my reason for stopping. I moved to Spain in December of 2011. My son was in Ireland. He was studying in Galway, and he was having a good life with his mates and stuff, and he didn't want to come over. So we moved to Spain in December 2011, and during 2012 my son came over for a few times, and it was Christmas. I think it was the third or fourth time he was over that year, and Christmas of 2012. And I'd already been thinking for the previous few months about moderation, especially for the, God knows, the umpteenth time. And I'd already been thinking about big change in my life, because every step I made to take forward, I left my business in Ireland, and we were struggling big time here, and I needed to make a change to help me go forwards. Every step I was making forwards, there's 2 steps back. That kind of mentality. It was just, I wasn't making any progress. I felt like I was slipping backwards. I had a lot of health problems. I had a lot of mental health problems. I think I was more depressed. I was, just having all these kind of psychological mishaps that were happening, and it doesn't help you when you've got all these things happening. When you're thinking negatively about your life, it's just never going to help you, because you're all the time your own worst enemy. Now, as I said, my son was a grown man. He was 21, so he was still a kid to me, but he was still a grown man in anyone's books. And whenever he came over, I love my son more than anything. And whenever he came over, it was a chance to be with him and just to spend a lot of time with him and make sure that I didn't have any, not much work to do. And we'd spend the time and have a lot of alcohol in the house, a lot of beer in the house. We'd have good food there. We'd go to restaurants, and we'd go out drinking. It wasn't like we were drinking all the time, but alcohol was a consistent theme during the whole holiday. So if he was here for a week, it would be a consistent theme, especially coming towards the end of the holiday, when I knew he was going to go home and I wouldn't see him for a while again, and that kind of thing. So anyway, out for a pub crawl. When I say a pub crawl, we're talking about going from one restaurant to one bar to another, to a next, and so on and so forth. Living in a town, 2,000 people, Guatemala del Seguro was the town we were living in. Go from one pub to the other. And the end of the night, we're walking on the beach coming home. We have a bit of a wrestling match. 2 of us are drunk, and this iPod falls out of his pocket. He was wearing these silly skinny jeans with small little pockets in them, and I didn't even realize it had fallen out. The next morning, we get up. 2 of us have got a hangover, and he came in to me and said, I've lost my iPod in the beach. I need to go and look for it. So 2 of us walked down to the beach, and we're scanning the sand, going backwards and forwards, looking wherever we were the night before, and couldn't see anything. So I said to him, look, I need to go back and have a coffee and sit down for a bit, and I'll come back out with you. And he says, no, I'm going to carry on looking. So I went back to the apartment. We had an old couch on the balcony. Got myself a coffee, blanket around me. It's pretty cold, but I'm watching him in the distance, walking backwards and forwards, just pacing, very slowly, but pacing up and down, with his head to the ground, looking for this iPod. And I just thought to myself, what am I doing? Where has this? How have I got to this stage in my life where this is happening to me? So it took me a while then to really piece things together, but it was that idea that this was going to be my relationship with my son, was more going to be as a drinking buddy rather than his dad. And that sort of set me up on that journey of I have to stop. And everything else that was wrong, my finances, my business, the psychological problems I was going through, the physical problems, all of that sort of curtailed. And I said, yeah, I'm stopping. So 2nd of January 2013, that was the day that I stopped. Moving on to what I think is the ideal motivational reason for quitting drinking alcohol, or for doing anything. We talk about something called motivational bridging, which is basically laddering up. Laddering up is that when you're making any change, you're at the bottom of a ladder, and the more experience you get, the more you learn about a certain journey, the higher up that ladder you go. the more experience you get in life, the higher up, and the higher up the ladder you go, the broader your perspective is. You can see a lot further, and the more you can see, the more experience you have. You see the next step and the next step and the next step, and you can set goals based around that. You can set your motivations based around that. That's why we call it motivational bridging, and it's expecting. Having expectations about your changes as well can alter the way that you think. When you experience a higher perspective, when you are up that laddering up process, your expectations also grow with that. Your expectations about yourself and your expectations about your life and your potential grow. So pain is a great beginning. It's probably the most compelling beginning that you can have, right? One of your whys should be, like I said, going back to the pain. The pain is not something that is going to last, so it's not a great motivation in the long term. One of the best motivations that you can have is you need something which is going to be big enough to inspire you, to something that you can look at and go, if only I could get to that space, if only I could get to that spot in my life. Your why, it should be sustainable. It should be something that you know that you can do day after day after day, that it's going to drag you forwards, it's going to pull you into your own future, and it's going to stop you from going backwards. That's one of the tricks of this is, to focus your energies and your mind going forwards. It should encourage you into long-term thinking. It should encourage you into thinking not only about the next month or 2 months or 6 months. It should encourage you to think about what's going to happen in 10 years' time, or in 20 years' time, or thinking about not only your life, but like I said, generational growth, where you're talking about your children's life or your grandchildren's life. It should encourage you to think about growth, your own growth, and it should encourage you to think about your expanding potentials. As you grow into life, your own potentials are expanding out. So it should also generate a lot of courage for massive change. And I'm talking about that from the perspective that the more into it you get, the more courage you get, because you're building yourself up, you're building your self-confidence, you're building your own self-esteem, your own self-worth, and your own self-belief, which is huge. It should give you the ability to grow and to realize those potentials as you're moving forward. So it's a step-by-step process. And as I said, it should make you think about generational growth. A lot of us are good at thinking about generational growth from an economic perspective. We think about, well, I want to leave my kids this amount of money. I want to establish a fund which is generational and is going to help my grandchildren and my great-grandchildren. But you're much better off thinking about this not in terms of economics. It's a good thing to think about economics, but you're much better off thinking about it psychologically. What psychological values and what psychological needs are you going to pass down to your children, so that they're going to be in a much better position than you were. Your why should also involve evolving as you evolve. So, as you're moving upwards, your why is changing. That best possible version of yourself is a good goal, because it changes as you move forwards. As you're moving upwards in this life, that's moving upwards as well. Your expectations about yourself are moving upwards. Your why should also inspire your achievements, inspire to get achievements that are going to make you happy, right? As I said earlier on, you want achievements that are going to make you happy enough to get up in the morning, every morning, excited about getting up every morning, excited about reaching the next goal and then the next goal and the next goal. But at the same time, you're also relishing and enjoying and being comfortable where you are. But you've got this dual personality, so you're not looking backwards, right? There's no point in looking backwards. What's gone is gone. What you're doing is enjoying where you are, feeling happy that you've made these improvements in your life and you're making continuous improvements in your life, but happy where you are and excited about what the future holds. That's one of the best things about it. You also want your why to be moving you away from the normal. And what I mean by that is the normal is what other people are doing. The normal is what got you into this in the first place. The normal is sitting there drinking or thinking about a drug that you can have that is going to take you out of life, out of your own brain, into a medicated state of mind. Why do you want that? You don't need that. So you need to seek out a why that is giving you also a very strong and rich personal meaning. What I mean by that is something that means a lot to you. It doesn't have to mean anything to other people. It doesn't matter, because this is your life. You know, for me, it's my children, or it's my child. It's my business. It's teaching something unique. You know, with Habits Unplugged, I'm always trying to improve myself in that way. When I'm teaching stopping drinking alcohol, for instance, we teach that as a starting point, not as something that you have to deal with for the rest of your life. It's a springboard to getting you to that best possible version of yourself. You know, one of my initial aims was just to be a better dad, and then that evolved into being the best dad that I could be, and then that evolved into being the best possible version of myself and living the best possible version of my life. I want to inspire creativity in my son. I want to inspire creativity in as many people as I can do. Creativity fuels innovation, and it helps you to think strong and then to act strong, to do strong things in your life. So the best possible version of yourself is it means that you're getting to attain the best version of your life, is getting to the tip top. And you know, there's a lot of different areas to this. You know, how much should you put into one facet of your life, you know, and balancing that out. Good goals, you need good goals, but they need to be, in general, a good goal is specific, it's measurable, it's attainable, it's realistic, and it's timely. And realism is probably the only criteria that the best possible version of yourself actually fulfills. So it's one of those abstract goals that is out there, and you know, you're probably never going to reach, because every time you get to a level where you think you are at that best possible version, there's another level above that, you know, and you only discover that once you get to that, and you learn and experience through life, right? But it requires building other goals, and that's the beauty of that model, of that framework, is that you're building goals that you're like stepping stones. You know, the old saying is, a journey of 1,000 miles begins with one single step, and you are aligning those goals with satisfying your needs, with discovering new things about yourself, with building your life, with strengthening your values and strengthening those needs. We're talking about the hierarchy of needs, where you've got the basic needs at the bottom, then security needs, and then your creativity needs, and you're basically going up until you're self-actualized, where you're at that top peak version of yourself. And as I said, it's about finding personal balance, right? Which is a job in itself, right? So I'm going to end the video here. Just before I end, I want you to take out a sheet of paper and start the process of figuring out what is going to motivate you into the future. I mean, let your mind go wild. Forget about what is probable, right? Forget about what is likely in your life, because you're operating from the drinker's mind. You're operating from where you are now. Focus on what is dreamable, what you can dream. If you can visualize something in your head, then it is possible for you to do it in reality, right? So it's a tough ask in the beginning, like I said, but it's something that you will grow into, and it's something that we go through with the laddering up process and the moderation, or the motivational bridging. So in the next video, we're going to go through 5 reasons why you should stop drinking alcohol. See you then.